Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So you remember back in the Season of the Lost how Mara Sov was talking about how she was going to take revenge on the spider for his treatment of her brother? For Mara, the difference between Uldren and Crow is still somewhat relative, despite how the majority of the rest of us have seen that there is a difference between the man that was and the man that is. Regardless, this changes nothing for the spider if he gets discovered by Mara Sov. So let's talk about how likely that is, as well as the political leaders of the city and what they have to say of the situation, because that is actually the most important part to all of this. I think if we're going to understand this, then we need a quick recap of everything that happened to lead us to this point and why Mara now wants to kill Spider. Back in the Season of the Hunt's story, we learned about how Spider had taken advantage of the newly resurrected Crow. Spider put an explosive charge inside Crow's ghost glint, and threatened to detonate it unless Crow served the spider's purposes. This was all done in a very mob boss abusive style, where it was supposedly done for Crow's own good. About as abusive as you can imagine, and as manipulative as you can imagine. This is essentially how we found Crow, wearing Spider's colors and in his undying service, up until the point at which we freed him. Of course, things would progress from there into the Season of the Chosen, Season of the Splicer, and all the way into the Season of the Lost, where the point would come where Crow had formally become a Guardian and was accepted, at least within the core ranks of the city's leadership as one. At this point, it was thanks to the efforts of Petra Venj that Mara was able to return to the Dreaming City. She was, at this point, reunited with her brother for the first time since her death. But her brother did not recognize her. As the Season of the Lost progressed, Mara learned of what had happened to Uldren and how he had suffered at the abusive hands of Spider. That led to this exchange between her and Petra.
Queen's Wrath, I have a directive for you. Watching the Guardian work, I have had much time to reflect. When we are finished with Savathun, you will prepare a detachment of paladins to depart for the Tangled Shore.
Of course, my queen.
When I give the order, you and your paladins will remove the spider and all of his loyalists from the reef. Permanently.
This was not something that the spider was oblivious to. He was, in fact, at that very moment aware of the danger that he was in and was looking for a solution that would buy him his survival. And so, where else would he look but to a fellow reputable businessman with a vested interest in maintaining diplomatic relations between humanity and the Elixir? It was the Drifter. He went to the Drifter. The conversation where all of this is made clear is actually in a lore tab of the Season of the Lost. It's in the Wayfinder's shell, and it reads as follows. The sound of noisy chewing echoes down a long metal corridor in Spider's lair, interspersed by the beat of footsteps. You ever try any of this? Drifter asks, tugging on a length of chewy, battered meat clenched between his teeth. Spider ambles alongside him, pausing to give him a look. No, Spider answers, his respirator hiding the way his upper lip curls in disgust. What is that anyway? Your boy said it was chicken, Drifter notes, nose wrinkled. I'm thinking he ain't never seen a chicken before. Spider's sigh is muffled. The reason I asked you here, he says loudly, forcibly redirecting the conversation, is because I wanted an honest, unfiltered opinion on the situation in the city right now. It tastes like petroleum and bubblegum, Drifter mumbles, pulling the wad of meat out of his mouth. Drifter raises one brow as he looks back at Spider and claps a hand on the big Elixir's shoulder. Come on, I know what you're looking for, he says with a laughing confidence. You want old Drifter's seal of approval on moving your operation. Spider is silent, but resumes walking at Drifter's brisk pace. The Killer Kells runs a tight catch, Drifter says, as he flicks the chewed meat onto the floor. That whole mess with the future Warcold aside, things are looking up for his people. Drifter glances at Spider, then jabs his side with 2 fingers. Emphasis on his. A fine time for humanity to start differentiating between us, Spider sneers. But they let you stay, so they can't be too discerning. Lead is a bit strong, But I get your point, Drifter says. The hallway ends at a large pair of closed doors, unguarded. Drifter notices. Now that Mara Sov has returned, I think my days here in the reef might be numbered, Spider explains as he flips open a rusted panel, then keys in an access code. The doors jerk to life and slowly grind open. Some may have some hard feelings over my little bird, he adds, over his shoulder with a laugh. And let's be honest, she seems like the type to hold a grudge. A bright light spills past the open doors, and Drifter is eclipsed by Spider's shadow. So, no, Spider says as he swivels to face the Drifter. I don't want your seal of approval. Spider steps to the side, allowing the Drifter to look more fully at what is hidden away in the hangar. A ship. I want to know if you can smuggle me out of the reef. And so finally, we make our way to the Season of the Plunder, where we can find the Spider in his... well, let's call it what it is, it's a box of shame. Here, take a look at this quick recap.
Thanks for helping your old pal Drifter with this delicate situation, hero. I had a delivery headed toward the last city when these House Salvation goons hijacked it. Now I just need you to get in there and expedite my shipment. I'll let you know what we're looking for once you're inside. I don't blame House Salvation for skimming a little cream off the trade routes. Couldn't have been easy after their head honcho got turned into a popsicle. But I didn't think they'd have the guts to try something like this. Once we get my cargo back, you'll see what I mean. Getting warmer. Our misappropriated shipment is just ahead.
Who's there? Drifter? Is that you?
I'm there in spirit, boss. I finessed the Guardian into doing the actual rescuing.
You let the Guardian see me like this? We'll have words once I'm out of here.
About that. First, let's discuss the matter of our hazard pay.
What? We got a deal. I will not be leveraged by an amateur extortionist.
Sure thing, boss. We'll just ship you back to the Tangled Shore. Queen Mara's got a handsome bounty on your ugly mug. Could be quite the payday.
Tell you what. House Salvation commandeered my old catch. If you can fight your way there, it's yours. My associates will join you along the way. Give them a lift, and we'll call it even.
Hear that, hero? We got ourselves a new ride. Just gotta break it out of impound.
There's something you should know. I overheard some dregs talking.
While you were hiding in your kennel?
House Salvation is rallying. Someone's kicked the hornet's nest. They're looking for something left over from the Dark Ages.
Sounds ominous, but I'm sure the Guardian can handle it. You weren't lying about these House Salvation jokers. They're all riled up. What'd you say they're looking for?
Relics. Antiquities of some kind.
That's awfully esoteric for a bunch of rubes like these. They gotta be taking orders from someone. Who the hell's calling the shots around here? That must be the big boss in charge. Take him out, hero. Oh, hell. The witness must have broken Aramis out. No wonder House Salvation's scrambling.
So, the ship stealer is back in play. The artifact she's after.
Price of her freedom, I bet.
Ooh, imagine the resale value.
Luckily, we got a clean ship and a dirty crew to chase her with.
Do me a favor, Guardian. Don't let this clown pilot my catch.
Come on now, Spider. I'll treat her like she was my own.
That's what I'm worried about.
Only thing you better worry about is the welcome you'll get back in the last city. Let's ride, Guardian.
So at the end of that, now he's sharing his catch and his crew with us so that we have a better chance of getting to these relics before Eramis does. But even with the chaos of the assaults on Savathûn's throne world, Mara Sov didn't forget about the spider. Back in the season of the Haunted, she was certainly still thinking about Crow and how her brother was doing. She still hopes to be able to maintain some kind of relationship with her brother, even if they're currently estranged, and after he's had to deal with a significant degree of emotional trauma. This is well reflected in the lore tab of the Tears of Contrition from the Season of the Haunted, which reads as follows. Mara Sov can feel her twin's heartbeat in the chest of the man now known as Crow. She dreams, sometimes, of gathering him in an embrace like she did when they were children, of one ear pressed to his sternum, listening. "I'm sorry," she imagines she would say. "For everything, I was wrong." But Mara has been afforded no such opportunity, and on nights like tonight, when she stares across the infinite void of space, alone, she reminds herself that her brother's absence is what he desires. It's also what she deserves. "My queen?" a familiar voice murmurs from behind her. Mara turns to find Petra's figure cutting a harsh silhouette in her doorway. "Where is he?" Mara asks. "The Leviathan." Shadows obscure Petra's face, making it impossible to read. And for a moment, Mara understands how others must often feel in her own presence. "Eris tells me he sees himself there. He sees Uldren." "I know," says Mara, because of course she knows. She feels Crow's suffering as intensely as she feels the beating of his heart. "You want to go to him?" Petra states plainly. "You shouldn't." Something steely has entered her voice. Mara recognizes it as a warning. "I know that too." Mara turns back to the twinkling ocean of stars, focuses on the vast nothingness beyond it. "Good night, Petra." "Good night, my queen." Petra's retreating footsteps fade away and Mara is alone again. No, she thinks. Not alone. She and her brother are together, even when they are apart. That is enough. It must be. Mara might appreciate the need that Crow has for space in this current time, and given their strained relations, but she'll still be hell-bent on ensuring that the spider is punished for his past crimes, all the more so if it helps to mend the broken bonds of the relationship that they have. She tells Petra as much in the lore tab for the Sparrow from the Season of the Plunder, known as the Bucker's Jolly Boat. It tells us the following. Mara Sov, Queen of the Reef, looked expectantly at Petra and waited for an answer. The Queen's emissary averted her eyes. "My Queen," she said, "we recovered a vast trove of supplies stolen from us over a period of many years. We have located treasures long thought lost and—" "Do not avoid the question," Mara said, her words edged with steel. Petra gritted her teeth. "We did not recover the spider," she says. "It is believed he sealed himself in a pod and transported himself in one of the very shipments that was intercepted by Eramis's forces." Mara tented her delicate fingers. Between her palms, she formed a tiny triacontahedron of matter resembling rose quartz. She spun the minuscule shape, tracking each of its 30 faces, lining each vertex with a tiny fractal arm that spun off into a curled fern of endless geometric detail. By doing this, she quelled the sudden urge to cleave the dreaming city in two, a reaction which would have discomforted Petra. Petra allowed herself a measured chuckle, knowing it would draw Mara's furious eyes to her. And it did. It was time for the ridiculous denouement. "We have received word that Spider now resides in the Lost City," Petra said, daring a shrug. The tiny crystalline structure abruptly fell to sand between Mara's hands. She cocked her head to the side, unable to hold back her incredulous smile. She shook a finger at Petra. "When I want him?" Petra brought a fist to her chest and nodded. You need only give the word, my queen. Mara shook her head, boggling at Spider's improbable path. Will Crow, she began, but couldn't find the right word to contain the breadth of justice she imagined. Petra grinned. I imagine we'll find out. Needless to say, the Spider should perhaps not be so glad to be in the city now, given that Mara is much more clear on the idea that she might be able to reach him and extract him, shall we say. However, for the moment, Spider is simply glad to be alive and still running his scams from the Ether Tank, the little pub that has popped up in the Elixni district of the Lost City. But whether he gets to continue running those scams isn't really up to him. There are those who could very easily decide his fate, from Mara and Petra to Mithrax and the Drifter to Aramis and the forces under her command to us. But above all else, I think the one group that has the most important say on the matter for the moment, and also has the final say which everyone has forgotten about, is the Vanguard, because they control the city now. It's no longer up to merely the factions what happens with the civilian population of the city, it is now down to the Vanguard to administer that. And from here, we actually get some insight into Zavala and Ikora's position on the Spider, and him residing in the Lost City. They discuss it in the lore book Between Stolen Stars in the second entry, Jurisdiction, which reads as follows. It's where we'll end today. And if Mara demands his extradition, Ikora crossed her arms behind her back and arched her eyebrow at Zavala. The Vanguard leaders were sequestered in Zavala's office. A terse missive from Petra Venj lay at issue between them. Then we'll happily accommodate her, the commander responded with a wry smile. But I suspect Mara's attention is elsewhere. Perhaps she needs a reminder, Ikora floated casually. It'd give us the political cover to act. It would, Zavala frowned. But even if we evict him, I'm reluctant to send him back to the reef. Ikora chuckled dryly. A fate worse than death. I can only imagine what the Tekkens have dreamed up for him. Besides, the commander said, turning an asylum seeker over to the Awoken would needlessly provoke the Elixni. He tried to keep his tone light, but it betrayed him as he felt the seeds of an argument start to form. True, Ikora shrugged, but Spider's very presence in the city is a provocation. You saw what happened when the House of Light arrived. All the unjustified hatred. Zavala grunted in reluctant acknowledgement. In Spider's case, the anger would be entirely justified, Ikora pressed, trying to forestall Zavala's inevitable objection. He would give critics of Elixni resettlement plenty of fresh ammunition. It would set relations back by a year, and we've only just stabilized. You're right, he conceded. Spider's more trouble than he's worth. Ikora sighed. If I'm right, then why are you about to fight me on this? Zavala smiled softly. They knew each other so well. 2 reasons, he replied. First, Spider is something of a cultural liaison between the Elixni and humanity. He was welcoming to Guardians when most of the shore was still a war zone. Is that how you're framing his ghost shell collection? Cultural exchange? Ikora wrinkled her nose in distaste. That's a mark against on my ledger. Mine as well, Zavala replied. But we have to accept the Elixni for who they are, warts and all. If we're going to live with them, we have to understand them, and nobody understands both sides like Spider. And second, Ikora prompted, we never know who might become an ally. Zavala gestured in the direction of the Elixni quarter below. The number of Guardians that Mithrax has killed over the years. He trailed off with a shake of his head. But now Mithrax fights for the Lost City as his home. He continued, turning back to Ikora. It was unimaginable even a decade ago, but here we are. And in Ido, I see the first real hope for collective peace in my lifetime. Not just a ceasefire, but a real peace. Zavala shrugged. In a century or two, who knows what Spider might become? Ikora narrowed her eyes and pressed her lips together in firm disapproval. Zavala smiled to himself, knowing he had won. So the Spider's fate at this moment is still undecided. For the moment, he's safe. And if time progresses and Mara Sov is genuinely drawn away by more important matters, then yes, it's entirely possible that the spider might just survive. But Mara Sov doesn't tend to forget, and Spider and Drifter's assessment that she holds a grudge is correct. But she holds a grudge with a memory that has lasted for well over millions of years. She is incredibly powerful, and her resolve is one that needs to be well tested. There are just a few individuals, I think, that might be able to eventually avert her from that path. And ironically enough, for Spider, I think the key one is actually going to be Crow. I think that if Mara chose to do so, she could very easily just crush Spider under her boot heel. But she is much more focused at current on the forces of the Witness and whatever lies in the future for the Awoken. Her concern for her people is Spider's current saving grace. And this is one of those moments at which maybe we can see what Zavala talks about starting to take place. The Spider still has a lot to learn if he's going to tread that road, and there's a question of whether he would even willingly tread it. After all, he's had various associates of his scouting out the Elixni district and the Last City generally as a prospective territory for financial gain for quite some time. You can tell this from the lore tab of the old Ignition Code grenade launcher from the Season of the Splicer. But ultimately, I think we sit here with this note that the Spider is here to stay for the moment, up until the point at which the Spider upsets someone who can kill spiders. That's it from me for now, though. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like, and if you want more Destiny lore content from the Season of the Plunder and from all sorts of other things going on in Destiny right now, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. Of course, also leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. What do you think's going to happen to Spider? I don't think I see him turning away from his old ways. I think I see him staying a swindler for the rest of his life up until something physically stops him. So maybe that's going to be the case of what happens, maybe not. But either way, let me know what your thoughts are. Of course though, know that your viewership as always is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime my name is Byf. Parodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.